Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rakak Badash, and I want to say Shalom, Yakmanakwat out there, doing this truth diligently. Coming at you once again with another lesson. And this one's titled, We Are Nearing a Cyberpunk Society. All right, or more specifically, because some people might be outside of the United States, I might just title it, America is nearing a cyberpunk society. All right. And this was, of course, inspired through Yahweh Shemiao Shai. It was brought, a thought in my mind through Yahweh Shemiao Shai through coming across this video here. And it was on the popular Reddit, as it usually is. And let me check the volume here. 1 minute. 15. All right, cool. Just checking. I came across this video here, and it's called "Would This Be Considered Cyberpunk?" And yeah, it's pretty cyberpunk. And of course, it's dealing, with the ICE situation. But and I'm gonna keep it muted because it's playing a Kanye West song that'll surely make them try to put ads on the video. I've been getting a bunch of hits on my page now over the past week. I think they hit like 4 or 5 of my videos from like a year and a half ago, saying that they've been copyright claimed by some company, and that it's not a strike, but they reserve the right to either ignore it or to start putting ads on it, and they're looking into it. So if I see any of those videos are monetized, I'm just going to take them down. Because, we provide this work for free, and I don't want anybody even to watch ads. They don't need to be profiting off of, the truth. So, but yeah, so let's go ahead and watch this. Of course, it's referring to the ICE, Gestapo, all right, the invasion, and everybody's having an issue with it, right, as they should. When you see your society crumble, all right, it's going to be upsetting for those that are in the world, all right, but it's not upsetting for us. It's it is still vexing. It is vexing, seeing all this wickedness happen in the world, but it's not like, oh, the society's crumbling. Oh no, that part we don't mind. It's just the wickedness is what we, gunning people down in the streets, all right, for no more than your feelings were hurt or you didn't like it. And of course we know it's Yahweh Shemiao Shai, and he's having that happen, all right, but that doesn't excuse Esau, all right, for his wickedness. All right, it's the same way like how we went off, so Esau was allowed to gain control of us. That doesn't excuse Esau for what he has done. Okay, so go ahead and check this out. It's a projection, all right, that's being projected onto this big building here. I don't know where it's at, but it's pretty cool looking. All right, you can see he's shooting, our love, our brothers, our sisters, our humanity, our democracy, our freedoms, our safety, our goodness, You see it, soul, love. Right. So people are pissed off, and it's good. It's good that they're pissed off, all right? Because that's one of the defining factors of, a collapsing society, all right? It's fantastic. But you see it, all right? You see the video, you see the clip, and a guy was basically asking, would this be considered cyberpunk? And they said, mildly cyber, very punk. It's not full cyberpunk. It's still cyberpunk. We are nearing a cyberpunk society. But it's not going to be exactly like, Esau wants it to be, in their media. For example, Cyberpunk 2077, if you go and look that up. Okay, there's a game. There's a lot of cyberpunk media between, cyberpunk is just a style. Okay, it's not like a lot of people think cyberpunk now and they just think of the game. It's a style, it's a aesthetic, it's a world type, really. And cyberpunk is just, a game that uses the name, but, many things are cyberpunk. For example, the game Cyberpunk, RoboCop had, I wouldn't say really cyberpunk, but it had cyberpunk themes, what's his name? I can't remember his actual name. Cybercop himself all right, was very cyberpunk, all right, but the world that he was in, not so much. Full cyberpunk would be Judge Dredd, all right, that's more full cyberpunk, all right, as far as for that age. But you can see how the buildings look here, but that's why people are like, oh, it's not fully cyberpunk, because, you know, flying cars and stuff like that, and, you know, all these different types of things. But Blade Runner, all right, Blade Runner is another cyberpunk media, and you see it has those same type vibes. Total Recall, to an extent, all right, was kind of cyberpunk. You know, it's more just general sci-fi, but it had cyberpunk themes to it, all right, escaping the world into a virtual reality, right? And then Ready Player One, all right, is kind of a mix of just a little bit of cyberpunk, but more pure dystopian. All right, now you might be asking, what is the difference between cyberpunk and dystopian? Well, cyberpunk, we're going to read it. All right, so cyberpunk is a subgenre of science fiction, all right, set in a dystopian future. So it's just, you know, a dystopian future. But so dystopian, what is a dystopia? All right, because we're living in a dystopia. All right, a dystopia is an imagined world or society which people lead wretched, dehumanized, and fearful lives. It is an imaginary place, possibly state, in which everything is unpleasant or bad, typically a totalitarian or environmentally degraded one. So they're saying it's an imagined place. It's an actual thing. Oh, well, life in Kowloon, British Hong Kong, has often inspired the dystopian identity. All right, like this. This is a dystopian, you know, dystopia. All right, but it doesn't have to look like a dystopia to be a dystopia. Okay. It says dystopias are characterized by fear, distress, and tyrannical governments, environmental disaster, or other characteristics associated with a cataclysmic decline in society. Okay, complete control over the people in a society through the use of propaganda, police state, heavy censorship, and denial of free thought. All right, worship of an unattainable goal, and the complete loss of individuality, and heavy enforcement of conformity. You know, that's pretty much where we're at, all right? There's tons of propaganda. We're pretty much in a police state with the Gestapo, all right? Heavy censorship of all the information, all right? We're still able to get some, but they censor what, you know, like we just saw it just the other day when the ICE shot that guy, all right? Shit was going down instantly, all right? They're like, it's not staying on Reddit. They're taking it down. That is heavy censorship, okay? That is heavy censorship. It says, or information or denial of free thought. What is free thought? Free will, the ability to go and do what you want to. All right, and we're getting there. Worship of an unattainable goal. All right, making America great again. All right, or in their case, the New World Order. It's not going to be obtainable, Esau. All right, you waited too fucking long. It says the complete loss of individuality, and there's not going to be no individualism, all right? There, you can act like you have it, all right, but you know you're all just a lump sum to them. It says a heavy enforcement of conformity, and that's if you're against Christianity, if you're against America or Trump, then guess what? You're a domestic terrorist, all right? That is enforcement of conformity. If you don't conform, you're labeled a terrorist. Yes, that is a dystopian society. All right, notice they keep on mentioning totalitarianism. What is totalitarianism? Look who they have here. They should add the American flag there. All right. It says totalitarianism is a political system and a form of government that prohibits opposition from political parties, disregards and outlaws the political claims of individual and group opposition of the state, and completely controls the public sphere. Right? It says in the private sphere of society. In the field of political science, totalitarianism is the extreme form of authoritarianism, wherein all political power is held by a dictator. Okay, this figure controls the national politics and people of the nation with continual propaganda campaigns that are broadcast by state-controlled and state-aligned private mass communications media. The news. All right, the news. And, you know, the elder Hawad, Slakia. In the news, right? So controls, it says this figure controls the national politics. All right, and that's essentially what we're working towards. And he's just he's the scapegoat. He's the puppeteer. It's really it's not just one. It's not a dictator. It's a combined group of a council. All right, of the elite. All right, that use a puppet that looks like a dictator. All right, to establish their works. All right, to get them done. And, he's the face, all right, essentially. He's the face. He's the puppet that they put out there so nobody looks behind the curtain, right, and sees them there, puppeteering this guy. And, that's why they chose Trump, is because Trump does a fantastic job at bringing chaos, and that's their motto is order ob chaos, all right, order through chaos, control through chaos, okay? And that's what they're doing. So that's, totalitarianism, dystopian. When you start reading through it, it's obviously, all right, it's something that's coming to our society and is already here in parts, all right? We're nearing a dystopian cyberpunk society, okay? And we're pretty much already like 75, 85, 95% of the way there. Soon to be 100%, all right? Why soon? Because we have some things we're going to talk about here. Hint, Revelation 13:16, which is big in cyberpunk media. But it says cyberpunk is a subgenre of science fiction set in a dystopian future. Now we know what dystopian is. It says it is characterized by its focus on a combination of low social status, all right, low moral character, all right, criminals, drug dealers, vandals, alcoholics, gangsters, sex offenders, sex traffickers, aggressive panhandlers, scammers, right? That's what we're in. Right, so low life, and on top of that, low living standards. It says, and high tech. High tech, advanced technology is a technology that is the cutting edge. Okay, so and we're currently working on the best GPUs, the graphic processing units. All right, which are used in your video game systems. All right, your gaming computers if you have them. All right, even to an extent they have built-in smaller model GPUs and phones. All right, that's how you get your graphics. All right, it's your graphics processing unit. It's what makes it. If you look back in the 80s with the NES and you saw their graphics processing unit was not as advanced as now, because back then it was just Mario, flat 2D as they call it, pixel art. But now, I mean, the shit, if you look at for example, I mean, I've been playing Red Dead Redemption 2. All right, if you look at the graphics on that, and this came out in 2019. All right, if you look at the graphics in Red Dead 2, it's those things. It's pretty immaculate. All right, the graphics are pretty immaculate, and you got things better than that. I mean, you look at Cyberpunk. I mean, hell, I'm trying to think of the best graphic game on the market that I can really think of right now. I mean, Cyberpunk is up there. All right, honestly. With when you look at it, because it is pretty fucking crazy with how good the graphics are, especially when you look into the graphics mod. All right, there's this guy that did like realism. Like, look at this shit, insane. All right, that is insane. But so it's just getting closer and closer, man, to having games that are pretty much almost indistinguishable from real life. I mean, look at this shit. But and back then, I remember when Percy Jackson, what was it, King Kong game on PS2. I said, man, graphics are never gonna get better than this. Okay, I remember. Here's what those graphics look like. But I remember when this came out, I said, man, graphics are never getting better than this. Let me try to actually find a screen of the game. I said, man, graphics are never getting better than this. That's as good as they're getting. Right? And that's how they looked. Looking back on it, you're like, what the fuck? But that was mind-blowing back then. All right? That was mind-blowing. Or still this day, Gran Turismo 4. All right, if you look at those graphics, I was like, man, and they're still actually, to be fair, even though that was on the PS2, those graphics are still pretty impressive. I mean, they're good. All right, you can see in the background, the LODs and stuff are a little low quality, but you know, still this day when you play it, it still looks very, very good. Very, very good. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. But, you know, high tech. So technology, we went all through that, all right, to get on the point that technology is constantly advancing. All right, we got phones with touchscreens. All right, I mean, there's so much that it's hard to really think, you know, because we're so surrounded by it. It's hard to see what is really impressive. I mean, we do have phones that literally we can access, you know, the whole internet and talk to anybody anywhere in the world. You know, you can have I don't know, man. It's just like a lot of things that are impressive. You know, I just put a widget, all right, on the phone, on my iPhone for, you know, gold and silver prices because they're soaring, all right. And it's just crazy that you can see the price of silver, all right, and gold just on your phone in real time, because, you know, a couple hundred years ago you wouldn't have been able to do that. Okay. And that's just with that. I mean, the TVs have gotten better. There's everything. The technology is just, it's so good that we don't even think about how good it is. All right. At the end of the day. All right. Just having this computer, all right, is a technological marvel. All right. And further and further than that, I mean, you think, look, there's an example of high tech, VR, right? VR. And I had a VR headset for a while. I had one of those, Oculus Quests. It was all right. I mean, it was cool, but I don't think it would ever really replace regular gaming. All right, some people it has, but I always just like gaming on a regular screen. VR games are too gimmicky, but some things are cool with it. But that would be an example of high tech. All right, you put on those goggles, and you do feel like you're somewhere else, and you use the things to control your hands, and it's cool and all right, but. You know, and that's really what they want as a society. Like, if you brothers haven't seen it, it is a good movie. I'd recommend you watch it. Ready Player One. That's what they really want. Everybody is in that shit 24/7. All right, they're in that shit 24/7. They don't like taking their goggles off, right? So anyway, enough rambling. It says it features a range of futuristic, technological, and scientific achievements, including artificial intelligence. There's another thing I forgot. AI, right? That's just I mean, I could go on Google Gemini and make a crazy photo in like 2 seconds, right? It says in cyberware, which are juxtaposed with societal collapse, okay, dystopia or decay. A significant portion of cyberpunk, can be traced back to the new wave science fiction movement of the 1960s and 1970s. So yeah, it says they explored the impact of technology, drug culture, and sexual revolution. All right, think about that. You know that, and that's what's happening right now, as well as, you know, this sexual liberation, all free love, right? So you can go and look at sites, a bunch of different things, but you can see cyberpunk plots often includes conflict between artificial intelligence, hacker, mega corporation. That's these. Really, it would be places like BlackRock and Google, and, you know, BlackRock's really the big one behind it, but Google, Apple, you know, Amazon, you know, mega corporations. That's what these places are. Johnson and Johnson. All right. Where else? They own Dove. It starts with a C, I believe. I can't remember, but they own a lot of different shit. But it says intend to be set in a near future Earth rather than a far future, right? Near future, like it's right around the corner, not a million years in the future. No. All right. For example, Cyberpunk 2077. That's not too far. It says the settings are usually post-industrial dystopias, but tend to feature extraordinary cultural ferment and use of technology in ways never anticipated by its original inventors. The street finds its own use for things, right? So there you go. And, you know, one of the big things in Cyberpunk, all right, is chrome, as they call it, all right, or implants, all right, cybernetic implants, okay. And cybernetic implants, if you look at cyberware, all right, or what cyberware is, all right, you can go on the 2077 cyberware. All right, what are they? Okay, cyberware. Well, I just want the definition. Okay, cyberware, technology that integrates directly with the human nervous system. All right, typically through implants, interfaces that enable communication between machines and the body. Once largely a concept within cyber fiction, cyberware is now an emerging field of biomedical research. So once it was just a concept, now it's really happening. They show you what they're gonna do before they do it, man. All those things, Blade Runner, all those different things. That's really how they want things to be. All right, it says with applications running from brain-computer interfaces, Neuralink, to advanced prosthetics. All right, there you go, Neuralink. Okay, the same thing with RFID implants. All right, they should also have that. RFID. Well, it's not gonna say it, but RFID implant is an RFID implant a form of cyberware? And it should say yes. Yes. It says yes, an RFID radio frequency identification implant is a form of cyberware and a foundational element of real-world biohacking or cyborg technology. And they want to turn everybody into fucking cyborgs. It says, while far less advanced than fictional depictions, these passive subdermal, they're not going to be passive. All right, well, they are going to be passively powered. Perhaps. It just depends. All right, I have my theories on it, on how it's going to be. I don't think they're going to be traditional RFID, like how they say, let's say, oh, RFID cannot be contacted long range. These are going to be contacted long range. There's already that technology. It's called RFID cloud technology, and it allows RFIDs to basically be picked up through Wi-Fi and then extended, right? So, and I believe that's what's going to happen, because it's not going to be, because they say, oh, RFIDs can only be interfaced with a very close proximity, right? For example, you'd have to be right up on like a chip reader. No, these are going to be used for that, but they're going to be able to be communicated with long range. So they're more than likely going to be through some type of mesh network. I've talked about this in the past. Through, if they are like that, you might have, they're already doing that with a mesh network for like phone calls. People are experimenting with that, or text messages, not necessarily phone calls, but basically tinkerers or engineers, you send a text message, all right, and that in a city, we'll just use a city because that's usually how it would work. Somebody walks by you, they pick it up, they pass it to the next person, they get on a train, pass it to the next person, and eventually works its way throughout the city, all right, and it's essentially like a digital mail, all right, and not necessarily purely instant, all right, but you get it through travel. So that's like that would be like near almost like an airdrop technology as you have on the phones, all right, but more instantaneous, and you don't get to you don't get the choice if you're airdropping or not. You can't see any of their things, but it's storing it, on your phone to get passed, and so on and so forth, all right. And once it gets passed, I'm sure it frees up that space, and so on and so forth. But they're going to access these RFID chips, and RFID chips are going to be mandatory. All right, they are going to be implemented in the whole world, and in a big thing in America. And with that, all right, and these RFID implants are the mark of the beast that the Bible speaks of. All right, if you're not familiar, most people here be familiar with it, but if you're not familiar with it, all right, we're going to get it in Revelation 13 and 16. And if you take that, you cannot repent. There's no way, because when you take that, that's essentially a big middle finger, all right, which is an illumistic hand symbol anyway, but a big middle finger to the Lord saying, no, I don't want you. I want to stay here in this society. All right, I choose Esau over me. All right, Esau is a so-called white man. Not every so-called white person's an Edomite. All right, just like not every so-called melanated individual is an Israelite. You're gonna have Hamites, you're gonna have Ishmaelites, you're gonna have people that look like so-called black folk or Latinos and Native Americans that are actually just tares. All right, mind you had the plantation owners, all right, that were popping the women and having little mixed little mulatto babies, and those babies are Edomites. Okay, and you're gonna have that, or you're gonna have, with the whole Spanish invasion in Mexico, you're gonna have the, a lot of so-called black people, a lot of so-called Mexicans that you don't even know, all right, are Edomites, all right, or tares, or other nations. It's not about skin color, and a lot that you see are Israelites, and a lot that you see aren't. Okay, so you can't just go off of skin color. All right, wanted to put that out there because that's not something that should hold somebody back into coming to the truth. Oh, it's the skin color, right? It doesn't matter if you're white, purple, brown, or green. All right, it really don't matter at the end of the day, because skin color is not the defining factor. It's parental lineage, and you cannot trace your parental lineage. Well, I would say paternal lineage. All right, through your father's line, as it mentions in the Bible. All right, they declared their pedigrees by the house of their fathers. Okay, you can look that up, and you can't trace your paternal lineage back that far. All right, you can't do 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. All right. You're fortunate if you can even do it 100 years ago, all right? But you can't go all that way. So how do we know that we go back to the lineage of Jacob? All right, well, being able to understand and receive this truth and call upon the name of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, okay? That's how we do it. And, for those that have the ears to hear and the eyes to see, all right, this is, that is the truth, and this is a part of this truth, all right, with this mark of the beast that's eventually going to be implemented in full effect. First, it's going to be optional. Second, it's going to be mandatory, okay? So, and you're going to be dragged off to facilities, and like the apostles say, you're going to have to make that choice on the way. Am I going to get this shit, or am I not going to get it? All right, and really, it's not your choice to make, because Yahweh Shai is going to impart what your choice is at the end of the day, and you better hope like hell you don't take it, because again, you can't repent from it. All right, it's like the digital law, okay, which was used in Hebrew servants. All right, if after your 6 years of captivity, all right, you would go out in the seventh, but if you had a wife, that wife would stay there. All right, if that woman was owned by the owner, or the slave owner, she was technically his property, so she would have to stay there and your kids, and you would go out. Or you would say, I love my master, I love my family, and he would bore your ear through with an awl, all right, and you would become his servant forever, all right? You can go get it. This is Exodus 21:6. Then his master shall bring him unto the judges. He shall also bring him to the door or unto the post, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. We got to get verse 5, though. It says, and if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. Then that's what happens, all right? And he shall serve him forever. So the RFID is the digital all, all right? That's you saying, I love Esau, I want to serve him forever, all right? And you take that chip, it's like your ear getting popped, all right? And you can't repent from that, because what you've done is you've denied Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai to the fullest extent, all right? You've turned your back, you've flipped a middle finger, you've spat on, and ultimately just completely disregarded the Lord, okay? And so 2 Timothy 3:1-4 here, showing you that we are in a dystopian society, or we're in one right now, but it's soon to become a full dystopia. We're in, like I said, we're nearing it. We're in it, but we're not fully in it. People go, oh, no, we're able to go some places. Coming soon, you will not be able to. 2 Timothy 3:1-4, it says, this know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, that means homosexuals, by the way, or getting with animals, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good. We talked about that yesterday. As the scripture says, woe unto them that call good evil and evil good, roughly paraphrasing. That's how they are. They despise what's good, but they love what's wicked. Verse 4, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. All right, Yahweh is his real name. Is having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. So, perilous times. Perilous times. Is that not what it said? Perilous times. What is perilous? What are perilous times? Let's look up perilous times and get the AI overview. Perilous times refer to periods of significant danger, difficulty, and risk. Okay, there you go. People become self-centered, disobedient, morally corrupt, leading to societal instability, harsh conditions, often interpreted as an end times prophecy. There you go. So yeah, man, and that's what we're nearing. Okay, in Revelation 13:16, this is what is the final nail in the coffin for that cyberpunk society, is that chrome, right? Those implants, all right? Oh, you want one so bad, you want to be just like a V, right? In Cyberpunk, right? That's the main character. You want to be just like him, or you want to be like Johnny Mnemonic, right? You want to jack in. All right, I'm jacking in. Right. So, and that's jacking in, and as opposed to jacking on. Jacking in is when you would have this. I'll show you. It's like the chip in your hand. It's not going to be like that. But it's like you have a thing in your wrist, or sometimes jacking in would be like you put a chip into your neck. All right, they have a chip slot, but jacking in, all right, would be like the Matrix, jacking in, like connecting you into that into the cyberpunk. Show you cyberpunk. All right, that's jacking in. All right, you got a thing in your wrist, or jacking in. All right, Johnny Mnemonic. All right, and like I said, I have that lady I call my aunt. All right, she's an Edomite. She's a techie. I'm a techie too, but I'm glad I found this truth, because who knows what I would have done. But she was like, yeah, man, I can't wait until they have the chips. I want to get one, right? And I never even mentioned anything. She just knows about the cybernetic augments, and she wants to do it, right? So, and she was one of the first ones to go and get that V to the A to the XXX. All right, so she wanted to get it before it even was really fully out, and she was a government employee at the time. So she was one of the first able, actually, in Nevada to get it. All right, believe it or not. So Revelation 3:16, it says, and he causeth all. Who is he? Esau. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond. That means it don't matter. It's small or great, rich or poor, free and bond. Doesn't matter if you're in jail, out of jail. Doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor. Doesn't matter if you're of small stature or great stature. Doesn't matter if you're a politician or not. All right, you want to get it. Okay, you want to get it. It's essentially their mark of allegiance, right? It says to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. Right hand, regular RFID, forehead, of course, Neuralink. It says, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark. Right now, they're getting you used to it, right? They're getting you used to it with, before they had the fast pass for gas or whatever, the quick pass, whatever it was, the little thing that you bought, and you could, I've talked about it before, and you could scan it at the gas pump. And then, slowly it became the tap to pay, the chip card, right? They even call it the chip, familiarizing you with the term. Do you have the chip? The chip? Oh, tap your chip. The chip. All right, put your chip right here on the screen. And then, I never tap the chip anymore, because you know what? The big thing now is Apple Pay. All right, you put all of your information in the phone, double tap, bing, right? That's it, all right? And the next variety of that will be, don't even need the phone. Forget your phone at home. Did something, blah, 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 blah. It keeps all your medical records, and it's right here in your wrist. It's in the quick, not even a pinch, all right? It's no more painful than getting your ears pierced, all right? Boom, bam, and you're done, all right? It's completely safe. It's completely effective, all right? And don't listen to conspiracy theories. That's what they're going to say, right? So Revelation 13:17, and that no man buy or sell save he that had the mark. And at first, it's going to be more than likely, as Apostle Tahara mentions, it's going to be an app on your phone. It's not going to be the mark. You can go ahead and use it. That's going to be all your currency, all right, is right there. You're not going to be able to, do anything, pennies and money is all going to be worthless. They already disbanded the penny, but it's all going to be digital, 100% digital currency, all right? There's not going to be any physical dollar, all right? And, unless you have that app, all right, that's the only way you're going to be able to buy and sell. But then, that app is going to be, like I said, it's going to be a time where they're going to roll out the chip, all right? It's going to be optional. Oh, the app, it's slow. The app will probably be slow or infunctional, or there'll be something wrong with it, or you can get your money faster if you get the chip, something. They'll add some incentive. There's going to be a bunch of incentives. They're going to, it's going to make grandma walk again if you get the Neuralink. A bunch of incentives. It's going to sound like the coolest thing ever. We're not going to lie to you. It's going to sound badass, all right? Who knows? It can actually, if you get the Neuralink, you can play your music directly to your head. It's going to sound like the best music. It sound like a concert. It's going to sell, all right? They're going to make it sound fucking awesome, all right? Because, they're not going to make it sound like shit or evil, or else nobody would get it. It says, and that no man might buy or sell, so you will not be able to buy or sell unless you have that mark. All right, like I said, at first, it's just going to be an app, all right? And it's not going to be the mark. You can use the app, but they're going to want to put that chip in you, and that's when it's done. It's over, all right? We're going to be out very, very soon after that. It says, save he that had the mark, All right, so unless you have the mark, you're not gonna be able to do it. Or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. And this is the 17 is where we use to cut through the butt cheek people. Oh, what if I get it in my butt cheek? I'm not gonna get it in my right hand or in my forehead. I'm gonna get it in my big toe. I'm gonna get it in my butt cheek. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter. It says, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Doesn't matter where you got it, you got it, you got it, and that's it. All right, it says, here's wisdom, let him hath understanding count the number of the beast. All right, what is the beast? The beast is Esau society. What's the number of what's their favorite number? It said, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Okay, that's the number of the beast. That's why they put it everywhere. All right, that's that system. They love 666. All right, it's their favorite thing. All right. So yeah. Here in 2nd Esdras 15:17, for more dystopian and cyberpunk vibes, all right, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. That's the other thing. You're not going to be able to go into a city, okay? You're not going to be able to go where you want to go. It's going to be complete totalitarian control. For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. There's another thing. The chip's only going to work for so long, all right, for these people. All right, then there's, oh, well, we can't provide food, to those that don't have the chip. They're going to get it because people are going to be afraid of food scarcity. And then, boom, I can't snap for shit. Boom. Whatever, I tried. The food supply is going to run out, all right? But we know Isaiah 65:13 that we're going to be fine. Isaiah 65:13, therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, my servant shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. Behold, my servant shall drink, but ye shall be thirsty. Behold, my servant shall rejoice, but ye shall be ashamed. Okay, so we already, we're going to be doing fine, Lord willing. All right, but you guys out in the world, you're not going to be doing so well. Well, I got the chip, you're not going to be able to eat. And then supplies are going to run low, and then you took this chip, and you're not going to be able to eat with it. All right, because it's prophesied. All right, you're going to be hungry. You're going to be thirsty. We're not. All right, Lord willing. So yeah, man. And with this, ultraviolence is another characteristic. I asked, is ultraviolence, I already knew it was, but it says, is ultraviolence a defining characteristic of a cyberpunk society? It says, yes, ultraviolence, extreme, often stylized, gratuitous violence is considered a defining characteristic and a hallmark aesthetic of the cyberpunk genre. It functions as an extension of low-life element in the genre's low-life, high-tech low-life, okay? Reflecting a dystopian world where life is cheap, morality is broken, technology is used for brutality, okay? You're gonna fucking just blow your face off, man. Blow your nose right off your face. So, yeah, and that goes into Matthew 24:12, all right, which Matthew 24 is a book of prophecy, all right, with the disciples asking Yahushua what type of things are we going to see, before, you come back, and he let them know, all right? So it says, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. I tried to click, but it wouldn't show it. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. There you go. And then, more wickedness. All right, you're going to see more wickedness elevate in society, which we're already seeing it, but you're going to see more. 2nd Esdras 5:1-2 in the Apocrypha says, nevertheless, is coming the tokens, behold, the day shall come, that they which dwell upon earth shall be taken in a great number, and the way of truth shall be hidden, and the land shall be barren of faith. But iniquity shall be increased above that which thou seest, or that thou hast heard long ago. There you go. And finally, let's get 3. It says, and the land that thou seest now to have root shall thou see wasted suddenly. There you go. But yeah, man. So that's it. All right, we are nearing, all right, a cyberpunk society. Okay, a cyberpunk society. And, those that have the eyes to hear and the ears, the eyes to hear, the eyes to see and the ears to hear, all right, and those that are of the elect, all right, will truly in sincerity be able to understand that, okay? Because, again, cyberpunk, high-tech, low life. Okay, we're in a society that's what? High tech, low life. It's just getting more cyberpunk and more cyberpunk. We're already in it, essentially. We're just getting deeper into it. Okay, we're just getting deeper into it. That's all. So, you know, if they showed you Google Glass and you know, Apple Vision Pro or whatever those fucking things are, and Oculus, and people walking around with smartphones, and you know, people having an opposition and hackers, and the state of the world that's in right now with ICE and all that shit, if you would have showed that to the people in the 60s and 70s, they would have said, oh yeah, that's a cyberpunk society, right? And they're the ones who came up with the genre, right? So yeah, man, we're in a cyberpunk society, soon getting worse and more dystopian. With that, we're gonna close out. Lord willing, it was edifying. Again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Shalom to you brothers and sisters out there. Keep enduring, keep the faith. We're almost out of here. Till next one, Lord willing. Shalom.